Dear students, welcome to Rats in Pathology. We shall be continuing with our class on wound healing. Before I plunge into the topic proper, I would like you people to kindly recall two very important messages. One, the question that you omit is your university question. Two, think of the subheadings. The subheadings will take you to the answer. If we do not follow these two things, we will have to pay a very heavy penalty. This is a quote that I liked most. The greatest fool can ask more questions than the wisest man can answer, by Dixon. It is in a small book for medicine MRCP preparation. And this is the array of questions that could be asked from this short topic itself. Freeze yourself and then have a look at this, because any of this can be asked as a question. The granulation tissue. Some of these topics will be a recapitulation or a recollection. Granulation tissue is one such thing. Students usually confuse the granulation tissue with the granuloma. They write one for the other and the answer is. So it is nothing but a collection of proliferating capillaries, which are branching from the nearby major blood vessels. The process is called angiogenesis. 2. Fibroblasts, the supporting stromal connective tissue, which mature into the collagen fibers. And 3. The edema that can be in between. 4 will be the inflammatory infiltrate. So these are the components of a granulation tissue. So whenever there is wound healing, there will be a granulation tissue which consists of proliferating capillaries, fibroblasts, maturation into collagen, inflammatory infiltrate, and edema. Growth factors. Fortunately or unfortunately, this is being asked as questions for undergraduates itself. To my knowledge, it is a clear-cut postgraduate question. But still, if we do get this question, what shall we write? Just follow the description that I am giving. The tissues undergo some damage like trauma. It can be accident, it can be a surgical incision. And because of this, you find that the growth factors will be liberated from the extracellular matrix or the cells themselves. And there are a variety of growth factors and the cells from which they are being formed. They can be epithelial cell, vascular endothelial cell, smooth muscle cell, osteoblast, fibroblast, etc. Look at this one. It is a stratified epithelium, keratin. So probably it is the skin that I'm seeing. There has been a damage. The growth factors are being liberated. Similarly, there is an extracellular matrix which is also producing the growth factors. These get attached to the growth factor receptor. Assuming this is a cell that is going to repair itself, I find that the growth factor is getting attached, after which it gets a signal for proliferation as well as neovascularization, etc. And ultimately, there will be either a repair or a regeneration or both. So this will be the crux of the growth factors. The answer continues. There are some factors called as fibroblast-derived growth factors, vascular endothelial growth factors, macrophage-derived growth factors. The fibroblast-derived growth factors promotes the synthesis of ECM, extracellular matrix, and this includes fibronectin. There are some chemotactic factors. Chemotactic means it causes attraction of cells for the fibroblast and the endothelial cells. There can be promotion of angiogenesis. Next is the vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF. This promotes angiogenesis. The macrophage-derived growth factor can produce interleukins and tumor necrosis factor. These will be promoting the proliferation of fibroblasts and the endothelial cells. If you people write this much, it is more than enough for undergraduation. And this particular slide is a recapitulation of what we had seen in the first class. So there is an epithelium, there has been an injury, and immediately you find that there is a hematoma formation, and these are all the fibroblasts in the adjoining tissue. So look at these blue ones, they are the inflammatory cells which come into the region, and then there is the proliferation of the blood vessel called as angiogenesis. Ultimately, all of this cause a repair. Ultimately, I find that the epithelium is also getting reproduced. So there is a total coverage of the epithelium and then a connective tissue beneath it. So that is wound healing. I would like you people to kindly go back to class 1. This again is a recapitulation of the previous class. There are two methods of healing. One is first intention, second is second intention. Occurs in a clean incised wound, it occurs in a larger wound such as an ulcer. There is hardly any loss of tissue. There can be extensive loss of tissue. Wound contraction is not a major factor, but here wound contraction is important because the size of the wound will have to be reduced as much as 80%. Less amount of granulation tissue needed, whereas here the bulk of the repair will be by granulation tissue, later on fibroblasts and a collagenous scar. Please by heart this. It will be applicable for an answer on first intention or second intention or both. Factors affecting wound healing. There are general factors and local factors. What are the general factors? This particular question has been asked n number of times, at least 500 to 600 times in MBBS. The general factors will be older age, poor blood supply, vitamin deficiency such as vitamin C deficiency, vitamin K deficiency. Vitamin C is important for the formation of collagen. Dependence. So the lower leg, for example, will be dependent, developing an edema, and there will be a delayed healing. Infection, obviously. Lesser amount of growth factors, which we have seen in the previous slides. Diabetes, steroid therapy. So these are all some general factors which will be affecting the wound healing. And in this picture, I am seeing a leg ulcer. If this wound has been on the face, the healing would have been much faster. But here it is prolonged and repeated dressing is needed. And what is this 4D that is required for wound healing? You will have to diagnose what the cause is. You will have to defend the tissue, that is by dressing, etc. Debridement of the wound, that I shall be showing you later, and develop a cellular response so that you will give all supplementary treatment. So these are important for the treatment of an ulcer. Now we go to the local factors. Site. Imagine the controversy between the face and the leg. Highly vascular, poorly vascular. Non-dependent, dependent. Size of the wound. Obviously, a small wound will be healing much faster than a larger wound. Poor wound hygiene. If it is going to be contaminated, as in the case of a road traffic accident, there will be a poor healing. Tensile strength of the suture. Suture is important to oppose the edges, but if it is too tight, then it prevents healing. Foreign body. Look at this particular picture. There is a foreign body over here, which is being very ardently removed by the surgeon, after which the healing progresses. Topical agents. Sometimes topical agents can act as corrosives, prevent wound healing. Radiation, ultraviolet radiation or any form can delay the healing. Edema, stasis, we have already mentioned. Oxygenation of the tissue. Perhaps this and this go hand in hand. Diabetic foot. Diabetes. Not only the healing is prevented, but it can go in for a gangrene if not controlled. Pressure sore. And any mechanical trauma. If it is going to be a mobile part of the body, obviously the healing will be delayed. And look at this particular slide. It can be an undergraduate slide also. All these dots are the nuclei. I am finding multiple nuclei in one cell. So it is a multinucleated giant cell. Also, there are some colorless lines. These are probably some foreign particles such as suture material. Therefore, the giant cell attempts to engulf and destroy it. This is a foreign body reaction. This is a futile effort because the particle cannot be digested that easily. Hence, it has to be removed by means of debridement. So this is a classical example of a foreign body giant cell reaction, which can be given as a slide form. All these dark dots are the other inflammatory cells that we see. Giant cell, foreign body, inflammatory cells. And this is the foreign body I have been talking about. Factors affecting fracture healing. I have taken this in my class on fracture healing, but just for a rapid recapitulation. I, increased distance between the fragments, infection, inadequate blood supply, improper immobilization, interposition of soft tissue, increased pull on the distal fragment. If there is too much of traction, the bones will not oppose and heal. Implanted foreign body. Then increased number of fragments, a comminuted fracture. This is a typical example of it. The bone has not broken into two, but into multiple fragments. Obviously, the healing will be delayed. This anyway goes hand in hand with fracture healing, but if you are a clever student, you will include this in wound healing. A very stupid mnemonic which I struggle to form. A to Z, we shall know. A for age or atherosclerosis, B for blood supply, C vitamin C deficiency or contamination, D for diabetes, E for edema, F for foreign body, G for growth factor deficiency, H for hematoma, I for infection, J I could not find anything, jump to L I wrote. But then K is also there, vitamin K deficiency, which can improve coagulation and angiogenesis. L is for leg, M is for movement or mechanical trauma, N for nutrition, non-sterile procedure, O for old age, edema, oxygenation, P for pressure, Q, quiet place, R for radiation, S for sepsis, steroids, T for the type of wound, U for unhygienic ulcer, V for venous or varicose ulcer, W for a wide defect, external factors such as radiation, dust, etc. Y, you should know all these, or Z, 0 will be your mark. So A to Z, I had managed to write something. I hope you people will memorize and reproduce it. What are the complications of wound healing? One, hematoma. When it is persistent, it leads to infection, though it is essential for sealing the wound. Infection, it can be due to non-sterile procedures, foreign bodies, or diabetes. Dehiscence. Dehiscence means separation. So you find that the edges of the wound are getting separated. It can be because of increased pressure, or there can be a weakness of the suture. You need what is called as a reinforcement suture. Evisceration, any protrusion of the viscera through the gap. Time has power to heal many wounds, but not all scars. Sometimes I pick up nice quotes. Complications of wound healing continue. Herniation. Through the defect, I find that there can be protrusion of the viscus. This can happen in a hernia repair, etc. Herniation. Suture. So there can be infection, dehiscence, abscess formation, ischemia due to tight closure, etc. Keloid formation, we shall be dealing with in detail. Contractures, again due to fibrosis. Dupuytren's contracture, Peyronie's disease, etc. are examples of contracture. Deficient scar. Sometimes there is not much of granulation tissue and collagen, therefore it is defective. Later on, when the pressure builds up, it will give way. Fistula, sinus formation, will prevent healing. And whenever there is any remnant suture material, it acts as a foreign body prevents healing. These are all the complications of wound healing. Please memorize. What are the factors affecting wound healing? Complications of wound healing have been asked n number of times. Keloid. By itself, this can be a case. Definitely, it is a question for you people in surgery. It is a firm, rubbery, shiny material that is formed due to proliferation of the fibrous tissue. It is larger than the original scar. Obviously, it is a ear lobule, and I'm finding such a large nodule over here. It is claw-like, and it is found to be increasing with time, common in the blacks, such as Africans and Asians. Burns, surgery, and sometimes injuries such as piercing, tattooing, and exanthematous fevers such as chickenpox can lead to keloid formation. Some people, pertinently, they harm themselves so as to create a beautiful design on their skin. This is called an ornamental keloid. Africans do that. Sometimes I think we also can try it. There is an overgrowth of fibrocollagenous tissue. Sometimes it becomes more bizarre. Increase in extracellular matrix, collagen, fibronectin are being formed. And as a treatment, we can give silicone gel or a laser therapy. Hydrocortisone injection is also being administered by the dermatologist, plastic surgeon, or the surgeon. This is a typical slide of a keloid. It can be given as a slide for you people. All these pink bands are collagen. So this is an artificial cleft in between. All the pink bands, almost no nuclei are seen. But one thing that is characteristic of it is there are broad eosinophilic bands which are acellular, running haphazardly without any purpose. And obviously they tend to overgrow. Courtesy Shutterstock. Wide bands of collagen, haphazardly arranged, eosinophilic glassy material, mainly collagen fibers. And there is a diminished presence of the dermal adnexate. I do not find any adnexates such as the sweat glands, sebaceous glands, etc. And it has got a chewing bubble gum like appearance. There are two kinds of scars. One is a hypertrophic scar, another is a keloid. The differences are given here. I would like you to kindly memorize it. It is not familial, whereas keloid is familial. Race not specific. In blacks, age. Children can have hypertrophic scar, and this can be in adults. Borders are confined to the wound, whereas in keloid it outgrows. It subsides with time, rarely subsides. The site are on the flexor surfaces, whereas here it can be on the sternum, face, shoulder, etc. Histologically, there is an orderly arrangement of the fibroblast and collagen, whereas here it is haphazard. So this is a good example of a hypertrophic scar on the skin, but it is limited to the incision. So once again, a recollection of the complications of wound healing. It can be infection, implantation, and a cyst getting formed. Sometimes hemocyanin pigmentation can be there, a deficient scar, dehiscence, incisional hernia, excessive contraction, keloid, and this is a picture of a Marjolin ulcer. Non-healing, but it can rarely give rise to a neoplasia such as a squamous cell carcinoma. One blessing in disguise is being a chronic process, there will be a lot of fibrosis. Fibrosis will obstruct the lymphatic channels. Therefore, the spread is not that conspicuous. It is more of a localized malignancy. Wound contracture can occur in burns, peritonitis. This is a case of burns. Sometimes in the abdomen, there can be tuberculous peritonitis. Adhesions can be there. These are all some complications of wound healing. Again, this is called as dehiscence. They have done a suturing, but because of the intra-abdominal pressure, there has been a wave that has been there. So this is called dehiscence, and sometimes the loop of the intestine can protrude through it. This is called evisceration. This is a classical photograph of a dehiscence. There is also some amount of infection over here. This is what I had been telling you about debridement. So there is a dirty wound, there is amount of contamination, some foreign body is there, and there is also yellowish material, probably purulent exudate. All these have been repeatedly cleansed by the surgeon and his team. And after some time, I find that there is a beautiful granulation tissue that is appearing over here. And finally, I find that the granulation tissue takes over. Supportive treatment such as antibiotics and control of diabetes should be there. There are two flow diagrams, anything you people can choose for the factors that are affecting wound healing. This is a picture again. Look at this facial injury. Nobody expected this face to be as normal as this later on. That is because young age, it is a non-grievous injury, good blood supply, non-dependent, clean, good nutrition. Sutures matter. There are different types of sutures. I am not a pioneer in it. I am not a surgeon. So intentionally, they are just bringing the ends of, and it can be a continuous suture, that can be an interlocking suture, that can be interrupted sutures, etc. And this is what is. This is the suture here over here. But after some time, the surgeon also puts another suture by the side. This is called a reinforcement suture. So this will support the first suture itself. Time heals all wounds, but history never forgets. Thank you.